Hi, thank you for joining us. With us today is Debra Squyres, the Chief Customer Officer and General Manager of Product Led Growth at Bonusly. Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ben. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for taking some time today to chat. Why don't we just dive right into it and you can tell us who you are, your path to becoming this awesome Chief Customer Officer and GM, and just your experience up to now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I have the pleasure of ensuring that our customers at Bonusly have an exceptional experience. And so that means I'm responsible for the team that takes over from the point of sale all the way through the customer life cycle. I have an interesting path to becoming a CS leader, honestly. I started my career in-house as an HR practitioner. So the first decade of my career was spent in enterprise HR departments. So sitting in the customer seat that we serve today. Um, from there, I transitioned to a consulting role, which was really exciting. I got to use my HR experience, but work in a multi-client environment, which I found really compelling. And it's great for building experience. And that led me to leading um, client service teams and then client success teams. So I started my career on this side of the table leading HR services for TriNet, a really large professional employer organization. It is a subscription business, so then moving to HR tech was fairly natural. And have since been focused solely on serving HR teams through great technology.
That's awesome. I love your path. I find a lot of people end up just landing in CS and CX from a different role. That experience really, really helps. Speaking of experience, you have vast amounts of it working with a bevy of clients. What advice would you give somebody for their first 100 days leading a CS team?
Yeah. So really get your hands dirty, get into the details. Don't be afraid to develop points of view and test them out. So often people are given the advice that, you just go collect insight for the first 90 days. Mostly companies aren't looking for you to sit around and think about things for 90 days.
That's so true.
You'll go back 2 hours before somebody asks your opinion, and it's okay to be wrong. But what you want to do is make that a really natural process where you're gathering insights, developing points of view, sharing them so that people can help poke holes in your knowledge or exposure. And that gives you more context. So then you can make better decisions with the team. It also gets the team really involved and getting to know you and how you think. So I would say hit the ground running. Don't be afraid to come up with points of view and share them. But be open-minded. Know that you'll be collecting context for way more than that first 100 days. And if you approach it from that perspective, you empower everyone around you to support you in making the right decisions, and you make good decisions together that help you do what you came there to do.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, do you find that looking at like a lot of companies have CS and CX data already there, NPS or CSAT. Do you find
Yes.
looking at that historical data once you get into a position is beneficial, or do you feel like you don't know how the test is run, you're not sure about it?
No, it doesn't matter how it was run. You should be asking those questions.
Okay, good.
I actually ask for a litany of information. Once I accept a role, I have a whole list of things that I want to get my hands on to study so I can start to develop a current state assessment and kind of understand the history. It also empowers me to ask good questions like, why did we do it this way? What was compelling? What worked? What didn't? A lot of times what happens when you come into a new role, you come in with all these great exciting experiences that have worked well for you in the past. I'm not a believer of lift and shift playbooks. I am a believer in understanding the context that applies and using the best of what you've done before to apply to the right to apply in the right ways in this situation. So I'm looking at NPS and CX data, but I'm also looking at business performance data, what our go to market is, what are our win rates in which markets, what is our ICP. I want to look at all of that, as well as team dynamics, because it just gives me a richer perspective on where we've been, and makes it possible for me to really hit the ground running with really good questions for my team and my peers in the business.
That makes a ton of sense. Now, after your first 100 days, right now, what would you say your current strategy is?
Yeah, so we've actually been going through a major transformation at Bonusly. We weren't taking full advantage of the technology that we had available. Our tools were underutilized. We were doing things the hard way, so our processes were maybe effective, but they were kind of not great for the people who actually had to run them. So I'm a believer as a leader of the customer experience that the way that you deliver an exceptional customer experience is through an exceptional team member experience. So my strategy covers not only how we're engaging with customers, what resources we need to have available, how we engage with those customers and what the model is, but it's also how do we make the teams most effective? How do we have them working on the things that are most impactful for humans to work on? We have lots of tools now, and we're fortunate at Bonusly. We use great tools. We're using the Gainsight CX suite along with customer education. Um, and so we have a lot of tools that we can configure to handle a lot of the burdensome administrative tasks. And so that's what we've been focused on. And then giving our teams the opportunity to have more compelling engagement with customers. We also stood up customer enablement and programs, and that has been a remarkable impact. So, what we're trying to do is ensure that we have the right content available in the right way through the right medium, meeting customers where they're at. Some want it in the LMS, some want to talk to humans. But we don't want CSMs to have to deliver the same thing over and over in a one-to-one scenario with customers. We want our CSMs to truly engage as consultants and trusted advisors. They know what companies are doing across a wide range of companies and strategies. So they can really, when partnering with their customers, help our customers improve their culture, really deliver a culture of appreciation and drive high performance through their teams. But if we have them focused on, delivering the same training over and over in a one-to-one or a small group scenario with individual customers, that's not a great use of their time, and we can't be as impactful as we need to be. So I don't know if I answered your question fully, but we've been working across the people, process, tooling, and program element to make sure that we have a comprehensive approach that works for our teams and then ultimately works for our customers.
Yeah, and you answered it perfectly. You have like an inside out approach when it comes to the
Mhm.
experience. Right, good employees have good relationships with customers. That's fantastic. Now, with having such a focus on your employees, and then I would say secondarily, but also in tandem, such an important role keeping your customer satisfied. How do you measure the success of those two things?
That's So I'm a metrics nerd. I mean, ultimately, we have a board meeting today, so I'm all into gross and net revenue retention and how the business is doing.
Mhm.
Those are key. Those are key metrics, but I want to look at all of the inputs and the levers that we have to pull. So I'm looking at team member engagement. We have ongoing engagement surveys, but we also do pulse surveys and change the questions over time to find out what's working and what's not. We do this specific within CS because we want to be able to ask specific questions. Where are you spending more time than you should? What's working? What's not working? And what can we rapidly address to improve their effectiveness and experience that then translates into customer experience? So from an internal perspective, we're looking at all of that: sentiment, employee engagement, and feedback. And that qualitative feedback is really important, so that we know where to focus our attention. From a customer perspective, we have a wide range of customer experience metrics. We're looking at time to get a customer launched and fully adopted. So we look at onboarding as well as adoption acceleration. We have milestones at each stage of the journey that tell us whether a customer is healthy or not, and will flag us to engage in certain ways to ensure that we get them on the right track if needed. And we do that all through value realization, renewal, expansion. So we're looking at all of those incrementally. We also have a post onboarding survey, so we gather insight on what that experience was so that we can improve that experience as well.
Again.
We'll be launching a deep customer relationship survey in Q3. So we'll look across the entirety of the experience. We do pulse surveys with customers as well, and NPS in the product. So we have a variety of mechanisms to gather that insight from customers. We also look at support data. What are customers reaching out about? What is working and what is not working in that process? So if they're reaching out on how to quite a bit, that's an indicator to us that we need to work with our peers in product on the UI and usability and in product prompts to make it easier so that they can intuitively understand what they need to do versus having to reach out on a how to. If we see consistent queries on particular aspects of the product or the experience with particular aspects or features of the product, then we're surfacing that to either product or engineering, depending on whether it's an opportunity to improve the feature or it's potentially a bug. And so we use that data as insight into what we need to prioritize with our partners in product and engineering. But we also use how we're doing from a response and resolution rate perspective to evaluate, what is the experience of support? And do we need to reconfigure our processes, or do we need to revamp our self-service materials, our support articles? So we measure the views on the support articles and tie that to what kinds of questions are coming in. And then from a customer enablement and programs perspective, we're measuring the efficacy of the training and best practices that we deliver. And we're gathering input from customers on whether that added value or not, so that we adjust the programming accordingly. So, and I don't even think I covered all of the metrics that we track, but we go deep because we want to understand what levers we can pull and how we can pull them to make the experience better.
Well, that's amazing. That's such a thorough way to measure what you're doing. Talking to different departments and having all these programs, surveys, interviews going on. What pain points do you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, so one, the problem that Bonusly solves is also like what I face as a leader. The market that we've been in over the past, 4 years or so, we faced what I would consider existential crisis with a global pandemic that led people from being in office or hybrid to purely remote, where people lost connectivity to their coworkers, didn't feel engaged, were feeling very isolated, to a market condition that is really challenging, and you see layoffs and really tough times out there. And for a period, you couldn't go onto LinkedIn without seeing the results of that. And so the nature of work has changed, and we have to engage with our teams in different ways to engage them, like to build culture, but also to unleash their full potential and performance. And so that unto itself is a manager's job, but managers often have to face many other challenges in running the business as well. So using the right policies and practices, having the right approaches to supporting your team, having the right tooling like Bonusly that helps with that, is really like where I focus my energy as a leader. My job is to make my team wildly successful. If I do that, they're engaged and wildly successful in realizing their full potential. They go do amazing things for the business, which means customers are really taken care of, but the business is taken care of, which at the end of the day, when you sit in the C-suite, is your job. It's not your functional responsibility. It's that you're delivering for the business.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, with all of these things you have going on, how do you get the C-suite to buy in?
So one, my job in the C-suite is to represent the customer experience, but to realize that I am there as a business leader, not as a CX leader. So my job is to help my peers be wildly successful as well. So I find building strong relationships, understanding their goals and objectives, and really, surfacing how I can help them be successful. Where are the friction points between teams? How do we make that productive friction? It's not that everybody has to agree, but we have different points of view for a reason. How do we engage in constructive conflict? And when you help others, they tend to be open-minded. I also come with a lot of data, and business leaders buy into data. Not always right, but you're at least providing objective insights along with your intuition, which you are called upon to offer as well. But even your intuition should be data informed.
Hmm. Do you have a specific example of using customer feedback to improve your company?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I was alluding to this earlier, when I was sharing how we use ticket information that come in from customers to help improve the customer experience. So we, on an ongoing basis, meet with all of the product leaders in the organization to review not only sentiment coming in from customers and specific feature requests that get prioritized. So, for example, we just delivered an enhancement that was a direct result of specific customers that were requesting that change. We had lost a customer over it. So
Hmm.
we're sharing, like, this is the revenue loss as a result of not having this feature available. And so we now have the feature available. But we use it, like, that's kind of a bigger impact. We use it also in making small tweaks in the approach that make the product experience more elegant. And then that product team actually gives us feedback on where we can be consulting with and enabling customers more effectively based on the intention and vision behind what we're building. So it's really a synergistic relationship.
That sounds awesome. That's a really, really good example. Now I'm going to give you an opportunity to get on your soapbox. What do you think the future of customer success is?
It's interesting. So we have been in the last few years really focused on, as a market, not just customer success, but like in SaaS in particular, recognizing the value of making customers wildly successful and retaining and growing those customers. Unlike any other time before in the history of SaaS, we're seeing this because of the market conditions that we faced. So this is a real positive for CX leaders and CX teams, because everyone is looking at you to have impact. It can also be a lot of pressure because everyone is looking at you to have impact. And so, one, really operationalizing the customer experience. So investing in customer operations and tooling that help streamline what can be streamlined and handled better by technology than by people. Organizing teams in a way that makes sense. You can't always throw more people at a problem. That doesn't always mean it is more successful. So, there's always this balance of how many customers can a CSM engage with. We look at it from the perspective, and I've always been of the mindset that I have to look at revenue coverage model, not number of customers, because at the end of the day, the revenue and the expense associated with that needs to be efficient. And
Can
so
you talk about what
if
a
we can't,
revenue coverage model is?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we have a particular framework for when we need to hire more CSMs. A CSM at a certain level should handle a certain amount of revenue in their book of
Hmm.
business. Now, a scaled CSM is handling, hundreds or thousands of customers, but it's a small amount of revenue. So the way that they engage with customers has to be different.
Hmm.
It's got to be a one-to-many approach. You've got to be leaning on technology. It's got to be digital led but human informed. And you need to have access to the human when it's absolutely necessary. So if a customer needs a human, we need to have a human
Hmm.
available. It may not be their assigned CSM based on on the on the model. And so as we go up in customer segment, enterprise CSMs will have a much higher revenue
Hmm.
in their book of business, but they'll have fewer customers. But the way that they engage with those customers is much more bespoke. And so that's how we approach it, because at the end of the day, I have a budget that I have to meet in order to do my part as a leader in this organization. So if it's not working, like if CSMs aren't able to do what they need to do, or support isn't able to do what they need to do, we evaluate. Is it that we don't have the quantity of people, or are we not doing things in the right way? Is there tooling that would help us? Are there changes in process or resources that would have impact?
That makes a ton of sense. What else should we know about you?
I have a real passion for people. There's a reason I've been in the HR domain all of this time. In fact, more than 30 years of my career. And so I'm really proud of understanding the HR buyer and HR user and the challenge that they face in their world. And it's gotten much harder over the last 4 years. with COVID and changes in the dynamics in the market. It's very hard to be an HR practitioner.
Mhm.
But at my core, my goal is to make work better. And I love to do that at the individual level. Like within my team, I want to identify what their unique superpowers are and find ways for them to demonstrate that.
Mhm.
And I just have like, I get to do what I love to do on a team level and within my own team through thousands of companies now with Bonusly and the way that we work with our customers. So it's really, I feel like I'm um, really lucky. I get to be in a position where I get to have that impact. And, people spend more of their waking hours at work than they do with their families. So how impactful is that on like the world?
Mhm.
So I come from a long line of like people who give back to the community. My father was a firefighter. My husband was a firefighter. My grandmother was a nurse. I didn't choose that kind of profession, but I feel like I get to have the same kind of impact in the world through my chosen profession and where I work at Bonusly.
As I can see your passion. You're just smiling so much. I can tell you love what you do. Last question
I
for you
do.
is how can we learn more about you and follow your career?
Oh, absolutely. Well, connect with me on LinkedIn. It's easy to find if you know how to spell my name. So Debra Squyres, DebraSquyres. Connect with me. I connect with everybody who requests a connection. I love to meet up with people. I go to conferences, mostly HR and CX related, but reach out and connect via LinkedIn, and we can get to know each other either async or schedule time to meet, or we can meet up at a conference coming up.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time today.